So when you start charcoal, you want to, especially if you're using a white piece of paper, you want to start with a toned background. You don't want to start with just a plain white piece of background because most of your tones are somewhere in the middle. So I covered this piece with my Vine charcoal, which is the lighter, rounder charcoal in your box, and then I rubbed it smooth with my hand. You could use a tissue or paper towel. Notice that I have some dark spots on my um, paper, and that's because my table is not clean, actually, not a smooth surface. So this is what I'm going to be drawing. I'm going to start by measuring some angles. You can see I'm using my charcoal kind of as my measuring tool. I'm using my finger to measure some ratios. That is like how you would use your pencil to measure your ratios, to make sure that things are proportioned and correct sizes. But right now I'm just blocking in some shapes to be able to make sure that the space and the proportion are all correct. So I'm making some adjustments. I'm drawing really general shapes. I'm going to make it more specific later. Just the space that the objects are taking up and double checking that that space is in proportion to the space of the other objects and the space of the paper as a whole. So I'm blocking in some of that. Fabric and chair. Again, doing some measuring, some angles. My paper looks a little skewed from the angle of this device of the video recorder. So don't be turned off by the fact that some of these angles are a little funky. It's just the skew of the recorder. I had to prop it up in order to get the whole paper in it. Here I am blocking in some angles of the, there's a large wooden mannequin that's standing on the chair, and I really just blocked in the angles. I don't need the shapes of that right now. I just need to know the space that that is taking up, and the angles that they are kind of leaning towards. This is the back. There's some fabric hanging off the chair that I'm blocking in some space for. And I'm going to continue doing this until I feel pretty comfortable with all of the shapes and objects that are in my composition. Then I'm going to start making things a little bit more specific. I'm going to start adding a little bit of depth, a little bit of detail into my objects. So here's the chair legs. And then once I feel like I have detail and depth, I'm going to start blocking in my shadows. So everywhere that is dark, I'm going to use the side of my charcoal, and I'm going to make big areas of shadow. Because remember, every line is telling you that there is a shadow on one side or the other. It's a change of tone. So all of these lines, there's got to be some sort of shading on one side or the other. So I'm looking at the still life and I'm trying to decide which side is in shadow, and I'm just using the side of my Vine charcoal, not the tip of my Vine charcoal, to block in those shadows. And these are really loose and really kind of fat right now, because I'm working big to small. I'm going to refine these shadows a little bit later. Right now, I just want to see what's dark and what's light, and kind of separate my composition into those two categories. As I do that, I am going to make some of the shapes a little bit more specific. Um, so I'm kind of working on the shadows and some shapes at the same time. And that's good because the shadows are what define the forms or what define those shapes. So by blocking in the shadows, the shape of the forms in my still life are going to naturally become more specific. And that's what we want. We want that to happen. So there was a little wrinkle in the fabric on the chair right there that wasn't there before, but it's a shadow, so I'm blocking it in. There's some shadows on the edge of this fabric hanging off the chair. The chair itself is darker than the orange fabric that is on the chair. Some of my shadows are really dark, some of them aren't as dark, but I really want to start differentiating between lights and darks. Remember, charcoal is a quick, messy medium. Use your hands to